Okay, now we're going to jump into, okay, how do we actually do this? How do we pull this off? And we're going to start with breaking a few more myths. The first myth is that humans are built to avoid change. They are not. They are built to avoid anxiety. The problem is so much change is conducted in a way which generates needless anxiety. People can put up with a lot more change than we give them credit for. What they have zero appetite for, very little appetite for, is confusion. There is a difference between a journey being arduous and just being frickin' lost. Right? But too often, it's the absence of information, there's no communication, or the information that's provided insults people's intelligence and just pisses them off. Or leadership doesn't have their act together and the information they're provided causes more questions about their leadership competence, which all serve to create anxiety. Which is one of the reasons why in that earlier question I said, how do you begin this? Don't have a lot of pomp and circumstances. Just start behaving differently. Don't call up a lot of attention to it. Okay, next myth. Cultural change must be led. I'm going to spend some time on this one. Cultural change must be led by the CEO. Well, true. If the organization is down on the mat, the entire corporation is down on the mat taking an 8 count, they're going to go out of business, they're going bankrupt in 2 weeks. That's true. However, that's not usually the case. Usually they're doing fine. They see this as a way to do better. The most effective change actually happens from the middle out. Some enlightened and motivated manager somewhere in the middle organization says, I want to make the corner of the planet for which I'm responsible a little better. They just need air cover from their boss. That's it. And true leaders will run their business as if it is their organization, as if it is their own business, treating those people who depend on their work to do theirs as their own customers. And you can get a lot done. If you decide as a leader, well, I'm not going to take action now until my leader takes action. Well, you have just abdicated your leadership responsibility. You have turned yourself into a follower. I don't need you. You know, that's one of the greatest wastes, in my humble opinion, is the person who, because they could only do a little, chose to do nothing. And there's a great Teddy Roosevelt quote, do what you can with what you've got where you are. It's so much easier. The micro can become a model for the macro. It's so much easier when it's done from the middle out. It's a function of, it's physics. It's changing a large organization. Here. Another space analogy here. It's a function of the size of the mass of the organization. Because when you're driving this change, you need, your biggest obstacle is escaping the gravitational pull of the existing culture. It's like an Apollo moonshot. So now this is going to dazzle you, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So the Saturn V rocket, you can look at all the stats for the different stages. But here's the takeaway on it. They carried, Saturn V rocket, they carried just under 1 million pounds of fuel, right? They had to generate 7.5 million pounds of thrust, just the most powerful machine ever built, to escape the Earth's gravitational pull. They burned 93% of their fuel just to travel the first 161 miles. Just to travel the first 0.095% of the distance in just 0.25% of the time. They did the whole rest of the mission with the 7% of the fuel that's left. Your organizational change effort is going to be the exact same thing. Right? You are going to burn the same amount of political capital, the same proportional amount of leadership fuel, the same amount of cultural energy traveling those first 161 miles. Plan on it. Right? There's no reason to think you're gonna be any different. Now, the escape velocity you need to escape the Earth's gravitational pull is like 25,000 miles per hour, give or take. That took 7.5 million pounds of thrust from that Saturn V rocket. The moon is 1/5 the size of the Earth. Escape velocity for it is 5,000 miles an hour. Your corporation, that's the Earth. Your little organization in the middle, that's the moon. Doing the whole Earth, that's really hard. And unless your corporation is at the brink of bankruptcy, I don't think your leaders are going to have the fuel or be able to mobilize the cultural energy or possess the political capital to pull it off. But an enlightened, motivated leader somewhere in the middle who's able to transform their organization, people will notice that. And it'll grow organically, virally. So now let's talk about how the organization has to change and why a product-centric organization. It's the difference between local optimization versus whole system optimization. People understand the difference? Too many organizations are structured such that they promote local optimization. They optimize the parts in a way that sub-optimizes the whole. You want to ensure that you optimize the whole. Traditional organizations that are structured in ways like this are the kind that promote local optimization. They're organized by discipline or skill, by function, maybe by workflow or process step, maybe by architectural layer or technology stack or technology component, or by channel. You know, this is our brick and mortar team. This is our mobile team. This is our web team. Bad ideas. The way you optimize around the idea of whole system optimization is about delivering value and service to the customer by reducing end-to-end cycle time, reducing transaction and switching costs, increasing ideation, and increasing customer value. To enable that, you have to organize around product. You want to have some fun reading. Google the Valve Employee Handbook. Just Google that. Just read a little bit out of it. Valve. They're a game company. Google their employee handbook and just read the first, few pages. You'll go, how the hell do they operate like that? New hire is brought aboard. They get to wander around and pick the team they join.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So optimizing delivery of value in service to the customer requires a product-centric. Agile organizations are product-centric. So to be product-centric, there's some things you need to know. What are your organization's products expressed in terms that are meaningful to the customer? It's fascinating. So we'll deal with IT shops and we say, if you were your own business, your IT shop was your own business, and you were setting up your website for your business, on that tab that says products, what would they be? Well, you don't think of it that way. Well, let's work together and think of it that way. What are you selling? Now, not only what are you selling, what differentiates you? Let's talk about what makes up. We use the term adds value, value building, value added, that sort of thing. What the hell does that mean? Here's my definition. Something is value adding if the customer would agree to pay for it if they knew they were paying for it. That's it. You know that really exquisite performance review process you just spent tons of money developing? I don't care. If that was on the sticker on the side of my car as a line item, I would say take that off. I'm not paying for that. I'll pay for air conditioning, but I'm not paying for that. That's my definition of value add. So now we've talked about what your products are. Let's talk about what differentiates your products. I talked before that because of price factor equalization, you need to somehow differentiate your products from your competitive products. Sometimes it's what your product or your service does. Sometimes it may be in the way your products or service does what it does. Increasingly, it's not that gadget at all. Increasingly, it's the services with which you wrap that gadget that is what differentiates you. We should at least have that conversation. You should be thinking about that. How many people are familiar with the book Disciplines of Market Leaders? Michael Tracy, Wiersma, those guys? Okay, there are three dimensions on which an organization will compete. Low cost, which requires operational excellence. Right? High service, which requires customer intimacy. Product leadership, which requires innovation. Now here's the rule. You have to be competent at all three, but you must excel at one. You get to pick one. What is your organization's distinctive competence? You can't be all three. You can't be everything to everybody. That's a recipe for mediocrity. On which one of these do you compete? If you're an internal service, what is the company expecting your distinctive competency to be? Are they expecting it to be low cost? Are they expecting it to be innovation? Or are they expecting it to be high service? What do they want you got to be competent at all three. But at which of these, pick one, are you going to excel? Let's look at some examples. And put this up there for Walmart. What do you think is their distinctive competency?
Low cost.
Exactly. Low cost. That's where they put that out there. High service, not so much. They do a lot in product leadership, but most of it is in service of lowering their cost. What about Lexus? I'd agree. They do some things with product leadership. It's definitely not low cost. Apple.
Innovation.
Right. Do you have a distinctive? Too many organizations have no idea where should they be placed. This is how you make decisions. This is how you decide what's of greater value to you than is not. If you don't think about these things, I don't know how you're going to decide some of that stuff. So my challenge to you is to understand or to decide what is the distinctive value proposition for your organization.